Hello everyone, MasterZeon1201 here, and in this video I want to go over some of the updates that you can expect with HardOps 987_4. One of the main ones is the improvements upon Uniquify. We're always in the process of trying to improve our ability to duplicate non-destructive objects and keep all of their modifiers intact. So here you see me just playing with a little bit of Uniquify in action, so now it's been improved to work even better than it did previously when we were talking about it last week. Just letting you know that we're always at the wheel trying to ensure that this tool is working as good as it's advertised. So continuing on, let's go ahead and just dive into what's going on with this update, and I promise I'll keep it brief. So Uniquify has been improved to support even more cases than previous. So starting out with the cube, we'll just tab into edit mode, grab one edge, control click mark in order to bevel an edge, and we'll just mirror that to both sides by holding shift on the first mirror and then clicking it to complete it on the second one. So with this shape, I'm just going to shift click smart apply to make a unique duplicate of this applied mesh in order to grab just those faces. From here we can solidify and just cut them into this mesh, allowing it to remain non-destructive. The next thing from here is using box cutter, we'll just jump off of this point in the center and press VV to perform a radial array, and we'll just get it to radial array in a way that respects the mirror, and shift to live. I'll jump off of this point except with a circle, and we'll just bring it down and bevel and roll it in. So far so good. And once we sharpen it, we need to roll down the auto smooth to get it to shade just right. And the next thing from here is to shift A, add a plane, and we could just solidify it, select both of them, perform a difference, but I'll use F9 to change it over to a fast, and we'll just duplicate it and place it down as well. And with box cutter up, we'll just switch back over to box, and we'll just draw a box, but we'll press W to turn it into a wedge. Lower to auto smooth a little bit more. We'll do the same thing here. And to fix this shading line, we don't actually need to have that edge marked. Old habits die hard. So we're just creating this very simple box just to warm up and talk about Uniquify. So this is a decent enough asset to talk about Uniquify. As you know, I went through and basically took this cube, modified it heavily, and added all of these modifiers. If we were to shift click ever scroll, we could scroll through the modifiers of it and just repeat the process we just went through, or we could just general click on ever scroll in order to just go through the cutters themselves without replaying the modifier stack. However, in this case, what we want to do is duplicate this mesh. So if I were to press Shift D, we see that the mesh loses its information as we move it away from the center point. And this is just a part of Blender. So what we sought to do was make Uniquify able to basically allow shift clicking to duplicate both the mesh and the associated cutters, plus the associated empties, plus anything associated with the object parameters of the object, to allow you to freely move it as you see me have done here. That almost didn't make sense. So let's press Q. We can scroll back until we locate this piece. We'll jump into array, just roll down the amount of arraying happening to get something a little more unique. Let's also bring back this shape. We'll just scale it in. We'll use the hops dots in order to bring back the planes. And so with our planes, we can just select this face and this face and just scale them. Actually, these are solidified. So for solidification, we could press 1 to push it on this side, which is what we want to do. But we want to grab this one and press Alt N in order to flip the normal. So now we're pushing it both inwards towards the center. So now we've took this, duplicated, made it live duplicated version that's unique. And the best part is everything's parented, so we can grab this, move it around, rotate it. But I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend probably a collection instance instead of moving around something that has a bunch of live modifiers associated with it. But to duplicate it again, we'll go under operations and just shift click Uniquify and move it over. And here we have another unique duplicate of the previous model that we're just having selected. So with it selected, we can go through Everscroll, bring up this thing, and we'll just roll even more until the mirror takes it and looks nice with it. And recall even more cutters and just begin making unique changes. So if we bring up box cutter, we can press Shift V and bring up the BC transformer, which this thing is not even supposed to be showing where it is. That's a mystery for after this video. But we'll just take this cutter, place it in there as well, and we see that it's also parented. And so that's the purpose of Uniquify, is to make a live version of a mesh that currently has a bunch of associated modifiers. And so to take it even a step further, we could press Q, go under Add Modifiers, use Displace, and press X in order to displace it on the X, and then press Alt X to mirror, and this time we'll mirror it on the Z, except we don't want to mirror it with the same mirror that we have previously. We want to press A and add a mirror. So now we're arraying it, doing everything that we're doing to it, and then displacing it, and then mirroring it to the other side. So it sounds complicated, but when you think like a modifier, it kind of makes sense, especially at 4 o'clock in the morning. But just like that, we're able to take this model, turn it into something quite different, and duplicate that, turn it into something even more different, and even displace it and mirror it to turn it into, you know, a classic beveled box. Alright, so I'm using Hops a couple of versions back with the Blender LTS, so it's as stable as possible. And we'll just go to New and just go to Sculpting. And for this, I'm using a Wacom remote. As you can see here, it's in my hand. It's just sitting on my lap while I'm using my main hand to perform sculpting. So, you know, normally this is my sculpting process. I will just jump into sculpt mode, start grabbing with the grab, and just start transforming the shape. Grab is actually my favorite brush in Sculpt, and I'm proud of some of the recent work that's been done to it in Blender to make it even more useful, like grabbing silhouette and topology, which I'll be going more into later. But I just wanted to kind of do a video just showing my process, at least when it comes to getting started with Sculpt, when it comes to using a pen display or an Intuos. So next comes the part where I want to extend on the neck. So this is one way I would do things, is I would just draw a mask, and then I would just go to move, invert the mask, and then just stretch it out. And I always found this workflow to be a little cumbersome, especially because you'll see. So we'll just you know, clear the mask, and we'll press Q, and let's control click on voxelize to control our voxel size. We'll do that again, maybe something like that, and then voxelize it. And using a grab brush, we can just, you know, keep messing with our proportions and shapes, just shaping this thing up. And you can see that, you know, having to deal with things like that, I don't know, just breaks the flow a little bit. So next thing is, you know, I would get my pinch on, jump into dyntopo, of course, and we want to probably make some adjustments to pinch. We're already set to sharper. We already have this maxed out. We can toggle brush to at least get it to display the right mode. And now it's kind of subdividing it as we're stroking it instead of simplifying it, which is the alternative mode that I use with dyntopo. So, you know, it's always a matter of getting in here and just, you know, nailing down the forms and then shaping it up, but definitely fighting the urges to detail it too soon, because, you know, once it starts getting too detailed, the slowdown becomes almost immediate. And so, you know, that brings us to the next part where we talk about decimation. So the thing I like about decimation is that you can decimate and it'll return you to dyntopo mode. But because we're in dyntopo mode, if I were to control click voxelize, we can see that there's an error here. And that's because the remesher cannot run with dyntopo activated, and that's just Blender itself. So it always kind of drove me crazy because you have to exit dyntopo mode, and then you can even set your dyntopo amount. I mean, just set it, and then from there you can voxelize it if you're trying to voxelize it. But you know, with Blender nowadays, I find that voxelizing is kind of an important part of the process when it comes to just keeping control over your mesh while you're working and avoiding issues with performance slowdown, because you know sometimes you can really get pretty close with dyntopo and just remesh it into shape and continue messing with it with something a little bit more understandable. And sometimes as soon as I do that, I will just go back in and just redefine, you know, some of the same areas in order to you know, get a shape together. And so, you know, that's my process with sculpting kind of in general, and my experience with it as far as getting back into it. Cat's over here knocking over files. Oh, come on, cat. Anyways, so with that, hopefully you kind of get the idea where I'm coming from. Alright, so now to show how Sculpt has changed for this particular version. So this was just a practice sculpt I did right before this. If we press Q, we see them using HardOps 987.4. And we see that there's a new option here called Add Primitive, which I'll be going into later. But notice that I am in dyntopo. And first things first is that if I tap voxelize, I'm able to voxelize. I'm still in dyntopo. If I control click voxelize, I'm able to adjust the voxelization amount and remain in dyntopo, and still voxelize and remain in dyntopo. And this isn't even a major deal. I'm sure Blender disabled it for the best, but it was just something I wanted to experiment with over the course of sculpting, because now that I've received a smaller pen display, I'm able to work in front of my keyboard instead of to the side of it, which eases the pain that happens on my side from working for a long period of time turned to the side, which was just really weird. This is actually a lot better. I'm just looking down at the desk. So I'm always looking for a really comfortable ergonomic way to do sculpting, because you know, it's just strange. I can't find a perfect comfort zone on the computer, but I feel that this particular Wacom 16 inches probably the closest. And also it's pretty cheap. So here we are, just kind of messing with the base, jumping into ortho, and to show this new mysterious add primitive tool, we'll just click it, and we see that over on the side we have a line, a circle, and a box. If you hover over the box, the shape will become a box. If you hover over the circle, the line becomes a circle. And my personal favorite, if you hover over the line, a center line will show up, which we can't see unless we rotate it, but basically we're snapping to the center. The other thing is that because it's optimized to a pen, you can roll the wheel in order to scale it if you're using a Wacom remote like me, but you're also able to hold shift and then move the pen hovering over the Wacom in order to scale it, and then let go and then just place it, and you're able to drop your shape. So right now I'm in grab brush, and my favorite thing with grab brush is that you can turn on topology and literally grab just an area that's topologically connected. So because this is a separate shape at this moment, we can just move it around freely without moving around the other shape that we had beforehand. So that's what we're doing now, just kind of setting this up, always giving a little too much neck. That's a critique I get. So we'll press Q and we'll just voxelize it. And you know what, we'll control click it to raise the amount. I actually like to voxelize things to a really simple state, and it just makes smoothing and shaping things up just a lot funner of a process. So that's really all it is with add primitive, is that we wanted to add the ability for users to be able to just quickly add a shape on the fly whenever they need it. So to show it again, we'll just click on it, and we see that we're able to just hover over the surface. It can get a little weird if you don't have the mesh completely unified, which is just a known issue. And I'm sure there's going to be quite a few requests with this thing, but I found it to be quite a fun time, and I wanted users to be able to experience it in its infancy before it began to grow into something more complex or even separate. So we'll press Q and we'll just voxelize. And one of my favorite things about dyntopo mode is the ability to rapidly detail an area and get it under control. So here I am just kind of rubbing it with the scrape and just getting some planes in there. And then of course we got pinch at max with our fall off set to sharper, and we'll just grab some areas and just pinch them in, just kind of planarizing things. And because of our brush settings of dyntopo, it's adding detail as it pulls the geometry. So it's a really nimble detailing way to handle dealing with these kind of low poly results. So as you see, just a little bit of a little bit of polish and pinch and smoothing, mainly, not even polish, but mainly pinch and smooth. We're able to turn this into a much more solid, refined piece. And so if we were doing the same thing here, we would just pinch this area, and then just smooth in between to get it under control. But when it comes to modeling planarly, there's rules, and same thing with Sculpt. Sculpt has a different set of rules when it comes to obtaining planar forms. So we'll just use the draw brush and just create a groove here, and we could just come back with the scrape, hit one side, hit the other, and then with pinch we really just make that the law of the land. So now that big crease line is part of its form, and I love just going around with pinch and just pulling areas until the geometry just gets real tight, and just smoothing out the tension that happens in between from the merciless stretching. But as you can see, just short work. And the best part is, if you need to, you can just quickly voxelize, which is just kind of jumping back a step for me. In fact, undo is just really weird with it. But in addition to that, you're also able to go in and quadriflow, which quadriflow is new, but I don't use it as much as, say, voxelize, because voxelize is just a ticket. And then of course on top of that, decimate, the classic way to just simplify your mesh on the fly if need be. Before I close out, I must also add that you can go into brush, and there's a panel that will list brushes, and you can just drag this up and down in order to just jump to a particular brush that you need. In fact, let's undo a couple of times, and we'll just press Q, go to brush, and cloth should be right in front of us, meaning that we can now just grab this surface and just cloth it up without a whole lot of issue. However, we probably see that we probably want to voxelize it just a little bit more. But previously I was testing this out on an example, and it was actually falling to cloth a lot quicker. But I think it was because of the amount of detail that I had going on the model. But all in all, I just wanted to do a quick sculpt demo to talk about add primitive. So even though this was a smaller update, focusing mainly on sculpting and fixing Uniquify to make sure it was at a proper level, for the most part, this was a pretty small update, just aiming towards bug fixing and overall improvements. However, when it comes to Blender 2.92 and 2.9 through 2.93, it's pretty crazy right now. It happens. So we'll have to see how things pan out with it. But for the most part, we remain at the will to try to ensure that everything's as fluid and stable as possible. But with that, we'll close out this video, and I'll see you guys next time.